I love this behind-the-scenes stuff. You really get a sense of how the court is looking at the legal issues in the case, and that's all going to impact what this jury ultimately hears in the case against Robert Durst. Okay, now joining my law firm of Micklin, Rossi, and Bryant is Ecleynne Mercy. How are you, Ecleynne? By the way, I'm the junior partner, in fact, maybe even a law clerk in this bunch. How are you doing today? And let me get your thoughts on this evidentiary issue or two or three with the Robert Durst case and motive.
Motive. Well, in law school, remember they told us that motive means nothing. Do not start an argument with motive. However, as you stated, motive is definitely important with regards to this case. However, the first case was since 1982, so they have a real uphill battle in how it's going to come in and how it's going to be relevant. So these preliminary matters are very important to really see what if all, anything can come into this new trial.
Yeah, and you know, Gene, very important on this issue is that it doesn't matter whether Durst really thought that Berman had info that was going to out him as to his wife's murder. That's not an issue, right? I mean, he has to, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. He has to have thought that. Whether it was really true or not is irrelevant.
Absolutely. It's a state of mind. And I got to tell you this. If he thought that Susan Berman was the one who made the phone call to the school or the hospital where Kathy, the victim, worked that famous day, and he thought, Durst thought that Susan was going to go to the authorities, there's ample motive. I want to just say something about what Ecleynne just said. You know, you learn in law school motive is not an element of the crime, but I got to tell you, I love having motive when I'm proving the elements of the crime.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the jury, Brad Micklin, they want it. They want to put the pieces together. And if they're left scratching their head as to why somebody would do what they did, they may not believe, beyond a reasonable doubt, some of the elements necessary.
Right. That's why, I mean, we can all sit there and say, well, you know, motive's not an element of the crime, but that's why lawyers are never on juries, because that's how we think. I think a person wants to hear a motive. They want to understand why somebody would do something like this. And remember, it's not important that he even did kill his wife. But if he thought she was going to say he did and he would get in trouble, that's motive to kill her. Even if he was innocent of the past one, which I don't think he is. I think he killed all these people.
That's a whole other story. And the judge pointed that out. He said, we're not saying you have to prove, Mr. Prosecutor, that he killed his wife in actuality. You just got to make sure you prove that Durst thought somebody had information that he did. Okay, so what's the defense have to say about all of this? I mean, again, they're dealing with the same rules of law. Motive is not necessary, but they know it's important too. Let's listen to defense counsel here. It is all HBO's fault, according to Chip Lewis, the defense counsel there. He is saying, Brad Micklin, not just that HBO was an agent of the state, which we've talked about before, but they helped facilitate the motive of the prosecution just to come up with evidence that they needed to put Mr. Durst on trial here.
Right. And maybe they did, but it wasn't the state's intention. The prosecutor's office, the district attorney, they don't go after an HBO company and say, hey, can you edit this film for me? Or can you go out and tape these statements for me? It just happens to be they got these statements. And I think the defense is right. They were trying to make it a compelling, entertaining documentary. They weren't really interested so much in the truth verse as much as being able to sell it later. But that's not anything that the state did.
Of course, and I can just imagine, having produced some of this true crime stuff over the years, man, when those folks heard that audio recording for their show, giddy, it does not even begin to explain how they must have felt, and it played out just as you might imagine. Ecleynne Mercy, so that is a huge issue in this case. It's been disposed of in terms of whether or not it's going to end the case. The judge deciding, no, HBO was not an agent. They are not subject to the Fourth Amendment protections, blah, blah, blah. But what about all the other stuff against Mr. Durst it's out there? It's been out there for years now. How do you sanitize a jury for a case like this?
I don't like, trying a case in public opinion, in the court of public opinion. So with that, you would have to bring that up, that the documentary was supposed to be a documentary, but it has to be entertaining, and they made it entertaining. For a case like this, I would definitely, they should have gotten, it sounds more Phil Spector-ish, so he should have gotten Linda Kenny Biden, to be real honest, to be able to kind of sanitize all of this, but to separate, the fiction of the documentary from the facts of the case. So that's basically what you have to do. You have to lean in with the HBO and make sure that, hey, the same people that brought you, all the sex stuff is the same people that are bringing you the information for this case. So that's basically what I would do. Just pull it out.
Ecleynne, you mentioned fiction. So, Jean, let me ask you this about the fiction of getting a jury that really has not heard things. I mean, yes, they may say, no, Your Honor, I haven't seen anything. I can act, pure and clean as the driven snow in this case. But that's not true. I mean, come on. So how do you, as a prosecutor, you don't want to be overturned because the jury's done something wrong. So how do you do the best you can to get the best people on that jury?
Well, when I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Alexandria, they tried Zachariah Moussaoui, the 20th hijacker, for 9/11. And I got to tell you, this is Northern Virginia, a lot of military retirees, employees, and a lot of federal employees. There wasn't a person in this area that did not know about Zachariah Moussaoui. And what they did is the prosecutors and the defense attorneys, they had a common interest. They had a boatload of questions to the jury that they had to fill out. They had to answer them. They had to come in 1 or 2 days to answer them. And then they sift through. And at the end of the day, they found about 100 jurors that were jury qualified. And I think he got a fair jury for one reason. He had pleaded guilty. And the hearing was basically, does he get death or life? That was the trial. And the jury was hung 11-1, and he got life. So it's very possible, even in a high-profile case like Durst, which is not Moussaoui, it's very possible to get a fair jury.
Good, good. Well, that's a good attitude, because maybe I'm too cynical. And I remember covering that case back in the day, and it was fascinating. Mostly a lot of head shrinkers testifying one way or the other. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're talking about the Robert Durst case going to trial in January, but there's a pretrial hearing on Monday. We are prepping for that. Come back. We will be here in just a few moments.